Loud. Got it. All right. So in thinking about the blowback firearms and how they function, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to share my screen, and we're going to take apart a couple of guns.
Okay.
So share screen. This one. Share. Okay. All right. You can see this Glock, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. So this is the Glock 44. As you can see, I know it's kind of difficult because it's dark, but no magazine, and we don't really see anything inside that chamber. We'd see brass in there if we did.
Yes.
Right? Are you comfortable that it's clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, one of the challenges with 22s in general is that you're not supposed to dry fire them, right? And
Right.
the reason for that is where the firing pin is located. Okay. Because the firing pin, because it's normally a straight vertical line, it's typically oriented at the top of the cartridge. And when you dry fire, it tends to peen the chamber. So, it's like taking a hammer in a pin, and you're hitting on it, and you're hitting on like an edge of a piece of metal. You'll actually peen it over. It does the same thing, and so when it does that, it makes it very difficult for the cartridge to actually feed into the chamber and seat all the way. Um, so what's interesting about the Glock is that even though you're not supposed to dry fire a 22, it has exactly the same functionality as a normal Glock. So in order to take it apart, you have to
Pull the trigger.
right. So click, and then we're going to squeeze here, and then pull down on those. We're going to let that slide off. Okay. Now, one of the challenges that you run into with 22s as a general rule is they are just dirty. There's the ammunition is nasty. The Here we go. So, come on. Yep. All right. So this gun was actually used this past weekend at a training event that I did, and I haven't, as you can see, I haven't had a chance to clean it yet.
Right.
Right. So, that being the case, there's just a lot of grime. This spot right here, that'll get it to focus. Nope. Nope. There we go. Maybe. All right. So that's our slide stop, right? And so on this version, you have one on each side. But this is what's going to engage with the follower in the magazine and cause them to lift. Places that get really dirty on this gun is here. And then if you can look at the base of that trigger bar. Oh, it's going to drive me crazy. I need more light. If you look at the base of that trigger bar, the plastic, can you see the deposits there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, all of that is something that you just have to pay attention to when you clean it. Now, the functionality of this is exactly the same as any Glock. So if you know how to take apart a Glock 19 or how to do with that detailed disassembly of it, it's exactly the same here, right? Instead of having two pins, you only have one pin. So you'd punch this pin out. That pin's going to allow you to remove your locking block. And then from there, you can pull out your trigger, and then your trigger assembly back here. And then you can actually disconnect that trigger bar from the trigger assembly itself. Okay. Now on our slide's exactly the same as a standard Glock slide, right? So we're gonna, pull the parts out. Here is the chamber end, and let's see if I can get this to. All right, so you can see how dirty it gets on the ram.
Yeah. Yes.
Right? And again, that's just because, like I said, 22s are dirty. Now, when you look at your firing pin, so all right, see that protruding tip?
Yes, sir.
All right, so that's actually at the very top of the chamber. So that's at the top of where the cartridge sits. The cartridge is going to sit right here.
Right.
Okay. Now, what's really interesting about 22s is that they actually function on a vacuum, right? And really any blowback operated firearm is going to operate on vacuum. But because the recoil on a 22 is so much lighter, the vacuum process is really important. So when the priming compound is struck in the rim of the cartridge, powder ignites. The powder ignites, it causes that brass to expand, so it gas seals on the inside of the chamber, right? With it gas sealed, everything goes out the front. Well, when everything goes out the muzzle, there's a vacuum that's created so that once the projectile leaves, it sucks the air back in. Well, that air comes back into the barrel. The case is now shrunk because it's cooled off. That rush of air hits that case, and then that plus the recoil energy causes it to pull backwards and eject. Okay. And that's why limp wristing or not holding the pistol with enough grip, or having a recoil spring that's too heavy for your load, so that it doesn't necessarily defeat whatever the locking system is, whether it's a lever or a rolling lock, or just straight blowback with no delay whatsoever, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And the way you described it with the vacuum definitely helps me understand it a little better.
Okay. The Ma Deuce, the M2 Browning machine gun and 50 caliber blowback.
I knew it was a blowback, but I never, that's one of the systems I never worked on. I got the 242 25 millimeter, the Bushmaster, but never got to do the Modus.
Yeah, well, and like in the Bushmaster, that because it's a chain gun, it's not blowback operated, right?
Right.
Because the chain drive is what moves it forward, moves it backwards, moves it forward, moves it backwards. Okay, so we're going to set this one to the side right here, and then let's see if this works. Maybe I can turn it up. Okay, so this is a Smith Wesson MP. All right. This is also a 22 caliber. Um, you know, as you can see, there's nothing in the chamber and we don't have anything inside the magazine well, right?
Right.
Now, what's interesting about this one is both of them are 22, right? Both of them are blowback operated. Um, the recoil springs are entirely different, right? And they're different tensions. So we're going to take this one apart. Now, to take this one apart, you're going to roll this down. This is your takedown lever, and then it actually pulls out. Okay. And then from here, press it down and back, and you lift up, and then you slide it off. So the only place that has rails on this particular gun is right here. All right, because you have to pull it back and up. The barrel and the rail is what actually holds the slide on. Okay, now here's your recoil spring. So that's a recoil spring for the Smith & Wesson. That is a recoil spring for the Glock. Why do you think? Just take a guess. Why do you think the springs are so drastically different? Besides design.
Um, I would, I don't know. I would guess that they're designed differently intentionally. One, the Glock, because I've only seen the twin spring like that on Glocks, but
Okay.
I would think that is a tension issue, and the fact that on the Glock the barrel comes out completely, whereas on the Smith & Wesson it probably doesn't need that as much tension to hold the barrel in place since it's mounted to the frame.
Yep. You know, so because the barrel is fixed, right? It's not going to move up or down. It doesn't actually function as part of a locking system itself, right? Um, and because it doesn't have to, you're not worried about it staying in alignment. You're right. It doesn't have to have as much spring tension. The other thing could be the weights on the slides, right? Because we're talking about balanced systems, right? So the weight of this slide has to be balanced with this spring with the energy developed by the cartridge, right? Same thing here is that the weight of this slide has to be balanced against this spring against the recoil energy of the cartridge to ensure that they function the way they're supposed to function. Okay. Now, this chamber's a little bit, or breech face is a little bit easier to see, maybe. Let's see if I can. All right, so you can see your extractor hook, right, which is right here,
Yes.
and then you got your firing pin hole. Sorry, that's so blurry. You can see where that firing pin hole is.
Yes.
So again, top of the cartridge, right, or top of the rim. Now, in this case, your ramp is built into. It's going to still be a part of the barrel, right? But it's actually built into the frame of the gun, right here. So if you're having feeding issues, one of the things you can do is you can polish that ramp, right? Connected to that is actually polishing the inside of the chamber itself, right? If you have a 22 blowback, or really any blowback firearm that's having difficulty extracting the case, because the purpose of the extractor hook in this case is to hold the case where it's supposed to be so that the firing pin can engage it correctly. Right? It's not, I mean, yes, it pulls the case out, but remember, we're also operating on the recoil energy and the vacuum. So it's more important to hold the case where it's supposed to be so that the ejector can engage the case where it's supposed to cause it to eject out. It's less important, like on the AR-15, that extractor hook truly holds that case head and supports it so that as it rotates to unlock, it's maintaining that constant contact, that spring contact with the case head, and then it pulls it out and runs it into the ejector. In this case, it holds it on there and then pulls it out so it can hit the ejector. Does that track?
Yeah, it's more of a stabilizing factor than
Yes.
an active, or it's a passive stabilizing factor, not an active participant like with the AR platforms and such.
Correct. Now, the firing pin on this one is located at the back of here. You can't really see it. Sometimes you'll get a drag. So if you polish this piece, which is actually going to travel across the top of your hammer, whoops, sorry, way off camera on that. So it's what travels across the top and then helps to push it back to lock it in place for the next shot, right? So if you polish that, that'll smooth up the action a little bit. Now, the firing pin spring, which is in here, the firing pin itself, piece of paper. Shit. It is just not wanting to focus today, huh? All right, so the firing pin looks like this, more or less. Okay, and then there's a spring. You gonna focus for me or no?
Yeah, I think it's wanting to give you a headache tonight.
It is wanting to give me a headache tonight. Okay, let's see if that works better. So the spring actually sits here, and all of that goes in upside down. All right. This spring is good for 10,000 rounds, give or take.
Okay.
Right. So at 10,000 rounds, this spring fails. I have had to replace that spring in this gun. I'm amazed that many rounds have gone through it. Right. And the only reason I know that is because I did research. Why isn't it working? Because I'd never had to replace that spring before. Right.
Right.
Now, to take that spring out, you have to drive this pin out, which then allows this piece to shift forward and up. Because you see your divots here and here.
Yes.
So it comes forward and up. So when you put it back in, it goes down and back. And you're trying to make sure that spring stays where it's supposed to stay. Which can be a real challenge. Right. And this is part of that. So your entire breech face actually comes out as a unit with this gun.
Okay.
All right. Your extractor hook is a part of that. And there's a spring back there that you actually have to kind of hold in place and make sure it doesn't shift out while you're pushing everything up and back. It's one of those days where you wish you had more than two hands, right?
And skinny fingers to fit in there.
Yes. Yes. All right. So, for your Glock, on your Glock, you're just going to take it apart like you normally would, right? So you'll slide your back plate off and then go from there. Here's your disconnect. So it has the same firing pin disconnect as a full-size Glock. For simplicity's sake, I like that they kept everything the same.
Yeah, to me it would make sense to keep it as similar to the full size or the larger calibers, because then it takes less effort for a gunsmith to work on them, and
Yeah.
it kind of keeps it proprietary, I guess.
Well, and it's less machining. I mean, if your system is set up to to manufacture it and all the parts are basically the same, it's just a lighter slide or different material, right?
Right.
Now, we talk about straight blowback, right? So on this, if we look, normally on a Glock, this is going to come up, right?
Right.
So it doesn't. So there is no locking system. The only thing that is holding this closed is going to be your recoil spring that's balanced to ensure that it stays closed until the energy's been expended.
Okay.
And then it goes back on exactly like the other. And that would be back together. Now on this one, spring goes on. We still have this piece pulled out. Get everything lined up, and it comes and sits down and comes back forward again. Close. And there we go. So that's two examples of blowback pistols, right? Both the same caliber, but the systems, the way the parts interface is different, right? Fixed barrel, not fixed barrel. Now in this case, it's not really a tilting barrel, but it's also not fixed, right? Because it's not attached to the frame.
Right.
Okay. Now let me show you one more. Ah, crap. I don't have it. Let me go get it. So what I'm going to do is let me pause. I'm going to pause the sharing for a second.
Okay.
And then is there a way for me to pause the recording? There should be. I'll be right back. We're just going to let it roll.
Okay. That works.
All right. Okay, so this one, whoop, stay there. This one that I'm about to show you is 100% a pure blowback. There's no extractor hook at all,
Okay.
which is interesting. So let me share. Go. All right. So this is the Zip 22. Now, interesting fact about this gun is actually responsible for the closure of a long-term uh, firearms manufacturing company. Um, they put a lot of money into it, and it didn't perform the way that it was supposed to, and consequently, they ended up having to close their doors. Right now, what's interesting about this little gun is you notice there's no real grip.
Right.
Okay, so um, to cock it or to charge it, you have these cocking arms here, right? So if I push this in, it's going to open it up. You can see that there's nothing in the chamber.
Yes.
Right? The slide does not lock back, right? So with it cocked, I'm a right hand shooter, so middle finger goes through that loop. This finger rests along the frame, and then I create a grip with my hands.
That's interesting. I don't know how I'd like it'd be fun to try to shoot it, but I don't know how comfortable it would be. Because
Um,
I've shot the micro compacts and stuff like that, and I don't like them because I don't have a grip.
right. Interestingly enough, it's pretty comfortable given that it's all I mean it's you're holding on to your hands is what you're doing. Now it runs off of a 1022 magazine, right? So you can run 25 round magazines. Um, I want to try it with a 50 round magazine, but I just haven't yet. I have one, I have a drum. I just think that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, it would
But
be.
so it was designed so that um, so this comes off. So that's your top plate that actually has your front and rear sight. Okay. The idea being is that you could install a Picatinny rail attachment so that you could attach it to the modular grip foregrip on an AR-15. Now, let's think about that legally for a second.
That would definitely create issues.
Well, it's going to be an SBR, right?
Yeah.
Because it's no longer designed to be shot with one hand. It really does turn it into, a 2-inch barrel SBR.
Eh,
Yeah, kind of crazy, huh?
yes.
Now, in here, you can see your recoil rod, your spring. This loop right there is actually on the top of the firing pin.
So when it goes back, it's setting the firing pin.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So to get into this, we actually have to undo this screw. And too big. Too small. The next one will be just right. Just like Goldilocks.
How hard is it to find these?
Um, well, it's really difficult. because, like I said, the company went out of business. So,
Okay.
I mean, you can find them, and people will get rid of them in a heartbeat just because they don't work. But I know how to fix it. Okay. So this plate comes off, and now we can see the back of the firing pin.
Yes.
Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in here. We're going to push that forward, and then ideally you don't lose these pieces. But you got to get that back. We got to pull this down and out, and I would almost always end up poking myself. So let's use a flèche. This way. Here. So this is what actually locks the recoil spring in. So we're going to come back. We got to get it back enough that then we can pull it out. And sometimes it wants to cooperate, sometimes it doesn't.
Without putting your finger on top, it might shoot across the room.
Correct. And I won't lie, I've done that.
I've done similar things with different weapons, but it's not
All
always
right.
the graceful thing to do.
So here's your rod, here's your spring, and then here is your cap. And you can see this cutout clips onto right here. Can you see where it's worn?
Yes.
That little shelf. All right, now this is your firing pin. So the firing pin slides out the back, and then you twist it, and here you go. So how's that for a firing pin?
It's a very interesting looking firing pin.
Right? So here's what actually makes contact with the cartridge. But all the rest of this is mass
To provide the
to
balance and
yep,
the inertia to ignite the cartridge.
yep, yep. Now next, in the top of here, you have this piece, which actually fits around the muzzle so that you can unscrew it.
Interesting.
Come on. Of course, you know, Mongo puts it on too tight.
Yeah, I probably would do the same thing.
Yeah, the phrase around my house is for my wife is Honey breaks, Huard fix.
Of course, if it's not clean, that's not going to come out very easily either.
Well, this is just a sleeve.
Oh, okay.
It's just a sleeve.
And it's ported.
Well, yeah, but it doesn't.
It's
It's not really ported. It just to
yeah,
look.
the barrel's not, the sleeve is.
Yeah. All right. Now, if you look in here, can you see the screws down there?
Yes.
So those are actually connected to your charging rods, right? So if I push this all the way back, you can see how um, that's where your firing pin's going to sit, right? And it
Yes.
goes over there. So now we're going to mount those. Now this screw's not coming out because that's actually what it connects to here.
Okay.
Okay. So that's spring loaded. So we're going to go ahead and pull that out. I'll set that to the side. Now this one, it'll come out because I'm holding it backwards. So I'm going to set that here.
So when you turn the pistol over, that other screw will come out. It'll drop out, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm going to ease that, take that spring tension off, right? And now I can actually push the bolt back. It should. So it's sitting here. All right. So this is your breech face.
That's a very interesting design.
Right? There's no extractor. So there's nothing to hold the cartridge to this bolt face.
Except for the face itself and the chamber.
Yep. But remember, this is the bottom, right?
Right.
So it's going to sit in this line. Um, but the only thing that's making sure that it actually stays where it's supposed to stay is going to be, if it will work with me, although like most things today, it's going to be complicated. This piece is always a pain. So the way this is set up is you've got this rod, which everything travels on, that is goes through this metal plate, and this metal plate is there to hold the barrel in alignment. So what you really got to do, as difficult as it is, sorry, I can't see what I'm doing. It's this plate in here that I'm working with, right? So you get the plate loose, and then ideally you get the rod out first. But you got to kind of hold that so it doesn't get twisted in there. Okay, the rod comes out, and then from there you can twist. So that's that piece that I was monkeying with.
Okay.
Okay. And now, I mean, to get to the rest of the trigger, we got to undo the rest of the screws. So we're not going to do that. Now, remember I told you that the predominant issue with this gun is that when it fires, it's not extracting the case.
Right.
Why doesn't it extract the case?
There's no extractor, and it lets the vacuum push the case out.
Right. So if the chamber's too rough or too tight, and you don't have that extractor hook, the vacuum isn't enough to overcome the tension. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So the way we fixed this, and let me see if I can get that to zoom. All right, can you see how at the base of that barrel there's a ramp?
Yes.
So I polished that in. Right? So by polishing that in, it helped feeding out of the magazine. And then inside, I polished the chamber so that it was a little bit looser than it was before, right? And so for doing that, I just used lapping compound on a cotton pad for a Dremel, right?
Okay.
And I ran the cotton pad, the cotton disc, on a piece of sandpaper until I had it the diameter I wanted, which was just slightly oversized, right? Stuck that in the lapping compound, put it in, and then turned on the Dremel so that I could polish out the inside. And then as I was doing that, I came out and I worked on this ramp. Okay. Now, the way this barrel goes in is you can see how it has a flat side on both ends, right?
Right.
So this actually goes into here like that.
Okay. So if you're working on it, the flat sides are to either side, and the bottom would be where the ramp you polished in is.
Yeah, so there's a flat and there's a flat. So the flat are on top and bottom.
Okay.
So when you put it back together, you want to make sure that you have the ramp on the bottom side.
Otherwise, you just did the work for nothing.
Right. Now, I mean, it's easy fix. Just slide this off, turn around, and put it back in, right? But those are all the pieces to the Zip 22.
Very interesting little gun.
It is. I was sorry that it didn't actually work out for the company, because I thought it was a neat idea.
Yeah.
And the price on them wasn't bad. I want to say I spent $100 is a dealer buying it. And then like retail was 179. So super affordable.
Yeah, that's and be to it seems like it might be something like that I could get for my son, who's just now 8, but to introduce him to shooting.
Yeah. Well, and it would be a neat project for the two of you to work on.
Yes.
Okay. So to put it back together, we've got to put our uh, recoil rod. Now, if you notice, it's got a flare on this end, right? So it's going to come through here, and then we work it back in, right?
Okay.
Now you want to match it. So if we're looking at this, right? Um, this is actually the way I want it to go in, and so obviously I have my recoil rod on the wrong side. So I'm going to take this out, turn it around. Okay. And like I said, it's a little bit hard to do. It's easier if you come in underneath, right?
Set that in place and drop the recoil rod in it.
Yep. There we go. All right. So I'm going to come in and then I'm going to turn it, right? Now from there, I can slide it this direction. Now I can come in. I think it's easier to come in from the top on that rod. And now I have control of it. And so my rod and that metal plate are back in place. Right?
Yep.
Next, we're going to put our barrel in. Now, I want to make sure, okay, there's my ramp. So I want to make sure that I got my ramp where I want my ramp.
Yep. Yes.
And then that slides in. And then underneath, I can reach in through here and I can push it until it engages. So let's check. Yeah, ramps where we want it. Yeah. Can you see the ramp on there?
Yes, I can.
All right. So that's at the bottom, right? So we
Yes.
get that in place. Now, this point, because we already have this, we might as well go ahead and put this back on, right? Because that's what actually holds the barrel in the gun
So
itself.
so it kind of the sleeve kind of acts like as a barrel locking nut.
Yep. And if I had remembered, the designers not only gave you a way to take it off, but they also uh, put your Allen key in there.
Oh, okay.
So,
So they give you the tools you need to disassemble.
yep. All right. So this is going to go in this way, right? So we get that um, on that rod. Maybe if it wants to work with us. So we can slide that all the way down. So you can see from here. So there's the chamber, and there's that block, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, um, one of these is shorter than the other. All right. Short one goes on this side. And you want to make sure that you can see uh, the lettering. So this one's going to go in here. And then from here, you put your thumb there. Grab your screw. Missed it by that much.
Hmm.
Okay, zip load. So this is going to go in here. And then same thing, right? We're going to get it aligned. We're going to press and hold. You can do this with it all the way forward if your keys are long enough. I always find it easier just to do it all the way back because I can see what I'm doing and I don't have to work as hard.
Yeah, you're not poking around in there trying to figure out where the hole is.
Right. All right. So we've got that in place. So that's good. All right. This is next. So um, it doesn't ride on this one, right? So
Right.
we're gonna twist it so that we can get um, that
Get
loop
it back up on top.
up on top, right? And then uh, it's going to drop into place. Now, if you can see, um, it's back, right?
Yes.
It's not flush. That's because in the process of doing everything we did, we actually cocked it.
Okay.
So press the trigger, and then we slide it the rest of the way forward over the trigger. All right, so now that's flush. So that would be cocked. That would be fire.
Okay.
And now this lovely little bugger. So uh, obviously the spring is longer than your recoil rod, which has its own set of issues. um, Now, if you look um, in here, that I don't know if you can see it, but in here there is, um, it's actually a divot, right? So this end of the recoil rod is what goes towards the muzzle,
Okay.
right? So it's going to fit in that groove right there. So what we have to do is we have to feed this through here into that divot, right? And then we're going to push down on the spring and this piece all at the same time.
Without the spring going
Crazy.
crazy or bending in the middle where it's not on the rod yet.
Right. Which is not easy. That's why I always prefer captured recoil springs. They're so much easier to work with. So I get it there. Now I can slide this piece on, right? And assuming I don't let go too soon, which I did, it has to go through here into there. And I can press that down. But the thing is, I don't want it to actually end up in the groove yet, right? So now this is a good time to introduce you to a tool. Smooth draw pliers. The pliers that don't have any teeth on them.
Right.
Which if I can get it down far enough, I can hold it with these, put the cap on, and then drop it in, right? So you can see. That way you don't mar up the recoil spring or the recoil.
Right. Because you don't want to put gouges on it, because then it has something to catch on and can cause misfires.
Yep. Trick is to not push that down while you're trying to grab it. So okay, so let me switch my hands. Whew. All right.
Would a locking hemostat work as well?
It could. I don't have one of those though.
Oh, okay. I don't either, but it's something I was looking at, wondering how useful it might be.
Well, here's a good example of why you might want one. Right?
Yep.
So with that there, got it mostly in place, right? Push. There it goes. Always. And as a good example, now we have to find it. So,
oh, nice.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm not going to keep you while I locate the part in the spring, but you understand how it goes back together.
Yes.
And so that gives you a look at 3 different 22 caliber pistols, all with different barrel and recoil spring arrangements, and with different breech faces. Right? One is
yes.
So I hope that helped with the blowback operated system.
It does. It gives me more of an idea on how it functions and why it functions.
Cool. All right. I should have all the assignments graded by either end of the day today or midday tomorrow for the past week. So just so you know, those will be ready for you to take a look at. Do you have any questions on any of the assignments?
For some of the worksheets, I kind of feel like I'm repeating myself on some of the questions, but I think in some ways it's kind of getting me in the mindset of there's steps and procedures and some of them overlap. So there's going to be some redundancy in there.
Yeah. So remember, a lever gun is a lever gun is a lever gun.
Right.
A revolver is a revolver is a revolver. Right. So it doesn't matter if it's single action, double action only. It doesn't matter if it's a Winchester or a Marlin or a Stevens. The process you're going to go through is going to be the same. And so that's really the intent and point behind the worksheets is for you guys to be able to, without having to have the guns in hand, work through what the procedures and processes would be.
Okay.
But yeah, if you have any issues or any questions, just let me know.
I will do that. So far, I've been enjoying it. I've missed for various reasons the past few video sessions, and I kind of upset about that, but there were things that came up that I had no control over. So
I hear you. I hear you. Next week will be my last week working on the current school inspection. So we'll do this, but we're going to be doing it from my hotel room instead of
okay,
from my office at home. But then the following week, it'll be back to kind of normal, instruction for me with you guys. And we'll probably take a look at an M1 Garand, a Mini 14 / Mini 30, a Steyr AUG on the next one.
okay,
And we may even take apart a Chris. I have a Chris Vector that I have not taken apart yet. So
that would be interesting.
So I think we'll get into that just because I think that'd be interesting for you guys and it would be interesting for me. And again, it's something I haven't done before. So, why not learn and play together, right?
Exactly, it makes sense. And for my tools lab class that started, I'll be doing the disassembly on my M1 Garand.
Okay.
So I'm gonna. I've owned it for over 30 years. The only thing I've ever done is field strip it to clean it. So
Okay.
I'm going to use this class to learn to detail strip it.
Did you change out your gas plug?
No, it's still got the older gas plug, the one with the straight slit, not the cross.
Okay. So if you're going to be firing modern 30-06 out of it, you need to replace that gas plug because if you don't, you'll bend your operating rod.
Okay. Well, I've been firing modern stuff. It hasn't happened yet, but that doesn't mean it won't.
Yeah. I think they're like $15. Go to
Yeah.
Made in USA and they should have it. But so we'll take a look at the M1 Garand and we'll go into that and that'll help you with what you're doing. Now, are you going to take apart the trigger package too?
I plan on breaking it down to as far as I can, minus the barrel from the receiver, because I don't have the action wrench or the gauges to make sure it goes back in where it's supposed to.
Yeah, for the FTT104, I wouldn't take the barrel out of the receiver either.
Right.
Yeah, but yeah, so we'll take a look at breaking that sucker down.
That sounds good. And it'll be 6 o'clock next week, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
It'll be back to normal time.
All right. I will have to do something with my son because my wife doesn't get home till 6:30.
Okay.
So,
you want me to keep it at 7?
it works for me because of my wife's work schedule and my son being home from school. But if everybody else needs it.
So you've been the one who's consistently coming. So
Okay.
let me adjust it to you. So it'll be 7 o'clock next week.
I appreciate that.
You got it.
All right. Thank you. Have a great weekend and we'll see you next week.
You too. Take care.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.